Hey, welcome to JG3 Reviews, and today, I got another fountain pen. It looks like I have two, but one of these I've already reviewed. A couple of years ago, I reviewed the Iraurita. That's still kind of hard to say. I don't know. The Iraurita brass pen, and this has proven itself. This is as reliable as it was when I first got it. Writes first time, every time, and that finish, even though I wanted a patina, whatever they use as a protective coating works really well because there is some patina developing, but goodness, look at that. It has held up just very, very well, and just a great pen overall. Maybe a little heavy for a shirt pocket, but a great pocket pen nonetheless. Well, I kept seeing this, still a brass pen, still the same weight, but with a matte silver, aluminum-ish finish. And I eventually thought, maybe about a year ago, why don't I go ahead and get that pen? And it has proven to be just as reliable as the other pen. Big shocker there. They're pretty much the same pen. But I thought I would share this with you today because it is a different finish and because I have in this pen a different nib from that first. So it's really kind of a finish and nib review of the Iraurita brass, non-brass looking brass pocket pen. Let's flip the camera and get into this review. Okay, so this is the Iraurita pocket pen, pocket fountain pen, and as I mentioned, this is a brass pen with just an aluminum looking finish. Have no idea what that is made of, but it's held up well. Although, let me tell you this, I don't actually carry this in my pocket with my keys. Now, I do carry this pen in my pocket with my keys, and it has held up very well. Actually, better than I wanted it to, because I would actually like more patina on this pen. Maybe I'm being too cautious with this pen, because if the clip is the same finish, look at that. That clip looks pretty much new. So whatever finish they use in the clip also holds up very well. Didn't really think about that till just now, but that would be true. So as I said, this pen has a silver aluminum-ish looking matte finish that I really like, and just normal use without keys has held up quite well. Now, I just go ahead, let's deal with the elephant in the room. Does it look a lot like this Kaweco Sport? Yes, it does. And of course, there are metal and real aluminum and brass versions of that pen. There are differences, and one of those is the length. So, this pen, of course, has to have that small converter inside, or an international short, because it simply does not fit a normal standard-sized international converter. Now, it's okay, you have this as an option, but let's face it, that converter holds very little ink, less than an international short, and I find it a little fiddly. A lot of people really like it, I think because they think it's cute, but I really don't care about cute. I would like a better converter than that, but, in the space you've got, honestly, I droppered this pen more often than I've used that converter. So, Iraurita, whoever makes this pen, Delight also has made a pen like this in the past. Moonman has made a pen, from what I understand, like this in the past. But this particular pen is longer, and you'll notice that with this line, which is not at the exact spot where the Kaweco would have ended, but it's close. You get all this extra room, and that makes it long enough for a converter, a standard-sized converter. Now, this particular one has wasting all that space, so I'm going to call this a negative for this pen, a push-me-pull-you piston converter. I really don't like those. I haven't swapped it out yet, but that's what's coming. Let me show you what came in my brass version of this pen, because it came with just a standard style converter, and wow, nearly out of ink. But that I much prefer. That little bit of extra length is a big help, and this one has, will be relevant in a second, a very mini, what do you call that? A mini Fude nib. Very, very mini, bit nib anyway. And this has a more standard type number 5 nib. So, other than that, the differences are, of course, again, the length, which allows that to have a standard converter, and And now I know what you're thinking. There is one other major difference, and that is that this one is legal and this is an illegal copyright infringement. But I say nay, nay. Or actually, I don't say that. The German courts have ruled that this pen is fine, that Kaweco can't actually call this faceted cap just their own. It's used by too many different products and companies and everything else to really be called theirs. And they decided there's not that much unique to the Kaweco sport here in order to protect it from this, because this pen actually makes what the court deemed to be, and I think what some users have deemed to be, some improvements that Kaweco has refused to make. Now, that's the current legal standing, and that is probably not going to change. So there you go. That you can think of that what you will. That may not change your mind at all. You may still say, "Well, I don't care. The courts were wrong." I get it. However, there you go. We've dealt with the elephant, and now we can move on, can't we? Now, this pen is, again, all metal, and it's brass inside, including the grip section is metal. It comes with this standard, in this case, just a fine iridium point nib, and you will notice that on mine, it is a two-tone nib, and mine is already showing some wear, tarnish, maybe a combination of both. I think it must have reacted with the ink that I had in this pen previously, which was in it for a long time. Ink was reliable, pen was reliable, but it does seem that the coloring of the nib has changed. Just for comparison's sake, by the way, that has not happened with my first one. And this pen has only ever had Pelican, the dark green, the Dunkelgrün. So that's all that I've ever used in this. It's never even had to be completely flushed out. I just keep refilling this pen. Never dries out, never clogs, never hard starts, just completely great. I really do appreciate how well that pen has functioned. And I expect this one to be the same, and so far, which is like a year or so, it has, except for that tarnishing. But that actually doesn't bother me. I tell you, that would actually look kind of cool in that brass pen, wouldn't it? Anyway, then as I showed you earlier, it does have that converter. Again, that for me, a plus that it's a free converter, a downside that it's one that I don't really like all that much, but functional, yes, not enough ink capacity, so I'll be swapping that out for something better at some point, because again, that to me is one of the reasons for this pen's ownership, is that you could have more ink in it. So it needs a converter that actually takes advantage of that. Now, let's just jump right into how the pen actually writes. All right, I did fail to mention this pen, of course, does post. No problem there. And not as, even though it's a little back heavy, not as unbalanced as you would think because of the way it rests against your hands. So that mileage will vary, of course, but I find it to be quite a comfortable pen to use. So this is the Iraurita. And I'm going to go ahead and say brass because that's really what it is. And this is a fine, which I think you can see actually writes kind of a fine to medium. I actually don't know what blue is in this pen. I can't remember, and it looks like 2 or 3 different blues that I have that are all similar, so I apologize for that. I can't tell you the ink, but it's probably, well, no, I'm not even going to speculate. Anyway. And I think it writes with a nice wetness there. Plenty of good ink flow. Really a nice nib, I think, even though nothing fancy, just a standard nib. You're not really going to get any line variation with that, see? That's just regular and a little pressure and a lot of pressure, and there's really not any difference there. There's nothing from side to side or anything like that. It is just a well-rounded standard nib. Nothing unusual there. I don't remember this pen ever really giving me any issues whatsoever. It just always seems to write. I don't recall it ever drying out. If it did, a dip in water solved it. I've never had to clean it out, flush it, or anything like that. It doesn't get cruddy. And that's the same with this pen here. I never, ever, ever have any issues with it. And I can't believe it because I paid $5 or less for both these pens each. That is $5 or less each. And that was with shipping. Just really affordable, and especially for what you're getting, and totally reliable. You know, the truth is, I cannot say that about my Kaweco Sport, and this is one of my favorite pens. I really like this as a pocket pen, and have carried it for years. And it does sometimes dry out. It does sometimes give me a little bit of trouble. When I eyedropper it, it does burp a little bit. I wouldn't eyedropper a metal pen, so that's kind of a non-issue in a comparison. But these have actually, I hate to say that, but it's true, they've actually been a little bit more reliable than my Kaweco Sport. Now, don't say that to ding the Sport because, again, way high on my list of favorite pens, and especially pocket pens. It's always at the top of my list there as a pocket pen because it's just very handy. So let's see. How about we do a little bit of this? Gotcha. Okay, so let's do pros and cons. Pros, it is a cartridge converter pen. Con, that converter that is included, which is pro, becomes a con because it doesn't actually take advantage of the extra room for a higher capacity converter. Also, pro or con depending on where you are and what cartridges you already own. It's not standard international. If I said that earlier, I misspoke. It is a different size cartridge, and I will post that here as far as what size it is that it takes. But so that's going to be pro or con depending on you, your preferences, and all of that kind of stuff. I always think it's a pro when it's an international cartridge that I can just use all different kinds of stuff, because that's where you have the greatest variety. But other cons, I'm just going to say it's unknown for me how well this finish can take the abuse of being in a pocket with, say, a pocket knife and pins. This one has proven that actually it holds up better than I thought it would, and maybe even better than I even wanted it to. There's a little bit of polishing, so to speak, there where it has worn away that protective coating. But overall, just has held up really well. Let me just show you one thing, though, design-wise, that I would consider a little bit of a con, and that is there is a plastic sleeve, which is good, inside the cap, but that sleeve allows the pen to be a little bit crooked. Can you kind of tell that as I go around the pen there? So it's not perfectly symmetrical in the way that it screws into the cap. For some of you, if you stare at your pens a lot, looking at them from this awkward angle, that might bother you. I find that it does not bother me. But, be aware. When you first get it, you'll go, oh, man, something's wrong with this. And both of them are that way. In fact, I would say the first one is worse or more exaggerated. See the big gap there? So if you're a panel gap person when you buy a car, you're probably going to be a panel gap person when you buy a pen, and that might bug you. But functionally, it doesn't affect anything. The plastic sleeve does do its job well on both of these pens. That's just, this is a telltale sign that this is an Iraurita. This is not a Kaweco. But anyway, I do like the pen overall. Any other pros? Great value, great writer, very reliable. As I said, I just keep pumping these things with ink and not even having to do as much maintenance as I do on some higher, reputationally higher anyway, quality pens. So I do like that they're low maintenance. They might have done very, very well that way. All right. God bless. Have a great week. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit that bell, and I'll see you in the comments and in the next review.